Right, hello, Sisyphus Complex Solution, episode 11. Several things to be getting through this week and that, so I'll try to crack on as best I can. The title of this episode is Words Don't Come Easy, which the reasons for which will become apparent when I move into one of the first offices as part of the Sisyphus Complex Solution, and I chose that for, like I say, what will become apparent. Anybody that doesn't understand where the term words ... don't come easy, if they don't understand where that comes from, it originates from an absolutely appallingly shit song from 1982 by somebody called F.R. David. One hit wonder, but it was one of those awful bloody songs that was just constantly on the radio, and it would just irritate you throughout the entire day, and even when you were nowhere near anything, it would still just irritate you later on. So that's why I remember it all these years later. Absolutely hate it. But in terms of just that particular term itself, it's appropriate for today. Anyway, so there's several recommendations that I want to make this week in terms of videos for you to watch for a variety of reasons. Now, the Keep Britain Free, which is the, oh God, here we go again, right, one at the top there. Keep Britain Free is a organisation that is run by a fellow called Simon Dolan, and they're looking towards having legal challenge against all of this Ponzi China virus tyranny that the blue socialists, pretending to be conservatives, are basically hitting the entire country with. I'm going to go through another one of those moments where I have one of these brain farts where I can't remember my fucking words, but how come, such is life. So anyway, this particular video is exceptionally important because the woman that is interviewed here, I forget what her name is, Claire Hamilton, I believe it is. I'll have to do my notes better, but anyway, Claire Hamilton. She's a lawyer, and she is being contacted on a regular basis by various people from within the health service, but especially within care homes. And some of the tales that she's being told. Now, when I say tales, I don't mean stories, I mean whistleblower information as to what's actually been going on. To hear some of the stuff that has been happening and the reason why the elderly are dying, it's enough to make your blood curdle. It really is, especially when you consider that excess deaths, I mean, going back to, I think it was May, excess deaths amongst the elderly in care homes in particular was estimated at around 30,000. So the numbers of people that, I mean, it is a case of these elderly are being murdered. These people that have worked their entire life, paid into the system their entire life, and deserve to be looked after in their old age, are just being left to starve to death. It's absolutely fucking disgraceful. It's just atypical of yet every single socialist bloody agenda that ever comes out anywhere, because it is a fucking socialist agenda. There's no justification for any of this crap. Every socialist agenda, it's always the same. The only thing that they know how to do in that is kill people, nothing else. So that's a really important watch, and I have noticed from the numbers that nowhere near enough people are paying attention to this and looking at the details, and you really bloody need to. And if you look at other countries as well, I know that other countries you've had issues with care homes. Dig into the details as best you can, try to find out what's happening, because the more people that understand, the more people that know, the more you can all actually start to have some sort of a collective. And as much as this Simon Dolan is going to do his best from a legal perspective, we know that the legal system is corrupt as well. So let them try to do things on the nice way, but then on the other side of things, that there has to be some sort of a mass gathering of people to get together and say, you're not fucking doing this anymore. Okay, so gathering information along this sort of line, it just becomes so much more important. Moving down to the one below, now this is a channel called the Corbett Report that you can find on YouTube and all the BitChute and various different places. This is run by a fellow called James Corbett, I do recommend that you have a good look at a lot of his stuff. I mean, he does go a little bit. I mean, he's not Alex Jones, put it that way, and for anybody that knows who Alex Jones is, but he at least tries to investigate and put together the evidence as best as possible for a whole range of different things that have been taking place. And I think he's been doing this for something like since about 2006. He's based out in Japan, but he's developed a good following and a number of networks and that help provide a lot of the evidence. And he's very good, together with his editor, I think it's Brockhurst or something like that. They put together some very good material. So this particular one is essentially pointing out how all of this Ponzi China virus has actually been stated as a test run. And it's how they are now, I mean, I'm sure you've seen it across various pieces of news anyway yourself. They're trying to combine two lies into one. The climate bullshit and the Ponzi China virus bullshit. They're bringing the two together to push this great reset and this whole fucking agenda nonsense. And you need to get some information. I know everybody likes to think that whenever anything like this takes place, that it must be these conspiracy theorists. Well, I've not put it down as a recommendation, but there is she does. It's a journalist by the name of Anna Brees. She does tend to go on about herself a little bit too much, as far as I'm concerned. But for example, she did some video footage, or had somebody do some video footage at the protests in London last week, where all of the headlines the next day was a few hundred conspiracy theorists gather to protest the lockdowns. Not true, on a couple of different levels. First and foremost, there was more like around about 20,000 of them last week. Second thing is, it was full of doctors, nurses, epidemiologists, professionals. These were not a bunch of conspiracy nutters. These are people that actually do know what they're talking about. Now, when you're having people of that particular calibre that are being shut down and being arrested, you know something's fucking wrong. And if you don't, then there's something wrong. There's something wrong with you. So anyway, these are the first two. I've got more that I want to recommend. Right, the top there, that side over in the corner, the top one, the Return to Eden. That's the third of a 3-installment set of documentaries done by what's it, Marin Pools. I think he's like a Dutch-German mix. I can't remember exactly. The third one is the best of all of them, and it does give some real good information, especially the real key differences between all of the predictive models, which is basically all of the bullshit, and then how you can have reactive models. So for example, you have a particular guy that he speaks to out in Africa, whose name Michael something or other, I forget what his name is. He's looked at observable data and then how you can actually react to that observable data, and he set out this model plan as to how you can move cattle around to be able to turn land that is that they've essentially said is going to be subject to desertification, and it is now managing to grow crops all year round. So it's understanding observable data, putting it into a reactive model, and then being able to actually keep the land going and to actually react to any environmental differences and to actually work with nature. None of all of this bollocks of you're all going to fucking die in 10 years time and that from the earth blowing up in flames because a cow farted. Actual proper real data, real science, none of the bullshit. It's an important series to look at. I can't say that I'm 100%. It's not the way that I would have put it together, but then, you know, who am I to talk? That I produce this shit, so fair play to the guy. He's trying to look at things in as open a fashion as he possibly can. So, you know, I'll give him his due. And like I say, this third one is particularly good. He also, quite importantly, has an interview with oh God, why did I not write down these names? Can't remember what her name is. There's a discussion around Agenda 21, and an awful lot of the stuff that you'll see around Agenda 21, which is now moved, that's subsequently moved into Agenda 2030 and is now part of this great reset. Once you do understand a lot of the background around this, and I know loads of people are not going to bother their ass to do this, but you have to understand how various organisations, various different model names, various different individuals and activist groups, and it's all done to be set out in such an intentional way of trying to produce a first and foremost a confusing picture, and then second of all to make it look like there's a much larger body than there actually is, make them look like they're more important than they are. So I mean, it doesn't quite go into that level of detail and that around the Agenda 21, but at least touches on something that has got a critical role within this. Now, a part of the scenarios of what's being something rosy. Anyway, the model that they're looking towards replicating in terms of this supposedly like the world governance plan is essentially based on continuing to push this failed model of the European Union and doing it on a world scale, where it is literally a case of, yes, there will be certain parts of huge land mass and that people will not be allowed to have access to, except for them, of course. But it's this ridiculous notion that a certain country will be able to produce this product, another country will produce that product, and everybody has their little place, which is only, I'm sure it works wonderful in the head of a lunatic, but it's sure as hell not working in the European Union, and it will be an absolute fucking disaster on a world level, because the whole thing has been put together by people that are just absolute morons. It really is an absolutely appalling plan. So it's an important one to watch. The one by the side of that is the Delling Pod, James Delling-Pole, who I've mentioned previously. He's got a good one this week because he's got a conversation with an author and journalist by the name of Peter Foster. Now, obviously, you'll get the usual sort of moans and say, well, what does this fella know about anything if he's an author and journalist? Well, he knows the history of these things. He knows, in particular, the details and the history of Maurice Strong. If you don't know who Maurice Strong is, listen to this, because that is the guy that implemented an awful lot of this crap and was the initiator for Agenda 21. So understand who Maurice Strong is, and then understand a little bit more as to the subsequent individual, Mark Carney. Pay attention to these people, because they really don't have your best intentions at heart. Obviously, Maurice Strong can't do anything anymore because he's dead now, but he's the arsehole that laid the foundations. So that's two Canadians. So as much as we all turn around and go, well, you know, there's all these eugenics freaks in the UK and America, Holland as well, which I'll get into later on. But there's levels of these criminals coming out of various different countries, and these two names in particular, I mean there are more, and there are a few more that the guy names in that video, but Maurice Strong as the initiator and Mark Carney now, these are people that you really need to learn something about if you want to know what the background of all this is. Then the one down the bottom, Climate Hustle. Now, I'd actually looked around for this for quite a while, and the reason why I put it in here and that is because yesterday Climate Hustle 2 was released, and it was done as an online viewing for about $15. I haven't had time to watch it yet, but what I did want to do is remind myself of Climate Hustle, the original film, And it does give you the real indication as to how much bullshit is involved in all these climatard nonsense. And it's interviews with a lot of the real scientists, the ones that originally produced the IPCC reports, and the ones that were playing a role in all of this, but not understanding exactly how much bullshit was going on until they found out and then said, fuck this, I'm gone. So you can't find Climate Hustle on YouTube, unsurprisingly, but you can get it on BitChute. So I've put the links to all of these recommendations in the description. So take a look at a lot of this stuff and that, because it pays for people to be properly educated across the board. Okay, so take that into consideration. Right, this particular part, this is giving a bit of an indication of some of the stuff that I'm doing external to producing these videos and that, getting some of the details, some of the background and some of the data and all this sort of stuff. I mean, most people don't generally tend to understand how much work goes into producing the small amount that I'm being able to show you. In certain ways, it ends up being a good thing, because, like I said, if I tried to overload you with everything that I've got, your head would probably fucking explode. But anyway, I have mentioned previously about UNESCO and the United Nations in general around the level of paedophile material. This is a response that I got from a Freedom of Information request to the UK government and the Education Department, and a really pathetic response, and how they want to make children to have a happy and healthy future. That's none of their fucking business. That's not what they're there to do. What I have got is a link and some work that I will be doing. When and how I'll actually go about presenting it is, I'll figure that one out as I go along. But I've now got access to quite a bit of information around the level of disgraceful. It's not even education. It's just sexualisation of children, and it does start in the UK from 4 years of age. And as much as it's hinted on as well, that within this response, in the materials that I've looked at so far, it is this the typical slimy way that all of this works, of saying that, oh, it's done in conjunction with the parents. We will consult with the parents. You can see the documents and you can see what it is that we're going to teach the children. And then at the same time saying it's compulsory. You don't get to say anything, and if you take your kids out, you'll be done. Those two things are not compatible. Oh, we'll consult with you, but we'll tell you to fuck off at the end, while we'll talk to your 4-year-old about masturbation. No. Hell no. This is something that, like I said, I will be digging into a lot of detail. I am going to include it within the Sisyphus complex solution process. I've already, within the database that, I can't remember, was it episode 3, something like that I showed you, episode 3 or 4. I've included a set document, a worksheet, so I'll be listing out everything, and I'll be highlighting all of the problems and that, and I will start to do something about this. There are other areas that I'm working on in terms of gathering more information and being able to hopefully provide a little bit of useful data to people, not only just in terms of this in being able to protect your kids, but I've got something else that's ongoing at the side as well, and that's in terms of, again, I'm not too sure about other countries, but I know that in the UK there's been apparently a law that was passed last year, where again it's just more of this stealth taxes, where they're trying to tax all people that own companies over the excuse of whether you collect data in any fashion, then you have to pay the Information Commissioner's Office a certain amount every year. And the way that it's worded in terms of whether you are somebody that collects data or not is so vague and overriding that it would be virtually impossible to get out of it. However, I do have something going on separate to this in an argument with the government, which may set a bit of a precedent. I don't want to go into too much detail on it at the moment. I just want to give you a bit of an idea in that I do have several irons in several fires around all of this. But there may be a potential of being able to refuse to pay in regard to who is considered to be the data controller. So understand the terminology around this. If you're not the data controller, then you're not obliged to be paying anything. So like I said, there's certain different terminology. I don't want to give out too much on this one just yet. There's a bit of a ways to go on it and that, but I want to give you a little bit of an idea that you might want to, if you're somebody that owns a company, or if you're in a small company and the boss has had this bill come through and he's just paid it willy-nilly without having asked any questions, you might want to tell them to look into this legally again, because like I say, there is a particular precedent that I might be able to set in terms of being able to have that law removed completely. Anyway, moving forward. So into the Sisyphus complex solution itself. Now on this particular one that we've got, I'm going to be doing 3 bodies under the Cabinet Office. That means that there's going to be 4 remaining. Hopefully I'll be able to do all 4 next week. If I think it's going to go a little bit long, I might just chuck all 4 in there and forget about doing faux effing. But I want to ideally this week and next week get the Cabinet Office out of the way so we can move on into the next department. This is the one that I have the issue with, and why I came up with the title for this week of Words Don't Come Easy. Because the Committee on Standards in Public Life, where they want to talk about how everybody, not only within government, but across the board, everybody's supposed to be acting in a particular fashion, and as it says on here, and that this is, I mean, there's very little that I need to put up about this particular department, because as you can see, you've got the accountability, honesty, integrity, objectivity, selflessness, openness, and leadership. The words that don't come easy there are based on lies, bullshit, reverse psychology, bastardization of the English language, saying exactly the opposite to what you're actually doing, and generally the biggest one of all, and that in massive capital letters that should be on there, is wankers. They do not follow a single one of these, and the primary indication of why they don't do any of these is, where's the budget? Where's the accountability on that? Where's your honesty that you won't put down how much that you're spending of taxpayers' money? Doesn't really make you have a great deal of integrity there, does it? So you've got an objectivity which is based on having no objectivity. You're just sat on your ass doing fuck all, telling everybody else that they're supposed to be doing something that you're not, which makes you selfish bastards. Very vague, so there's no openness there. And the only leadership seems to be typical socialist arsehole, do as I say, not as I do. I can do that, you can't. Fucking bullshit. Bullshit, useless, pointless individuals, pointless department, irrelevant individuals, no time for it. It will be out within the plan. Get rid of them. Don't need useless wankers, especially ones that lie. Right, the next department, the Security Vetting Appeals Panel. The only part that's important here, and 75 grand, is that a lot of money? Again, no, but can be used better elsewhere. When I run through the documentation here, they essentially identify their own problem as to why they are completely irrelevant. And that is that they overlap with the employment tribunal. Well, if you're basically doing the exact same thing as something that already exists, that means that we don't need you. Why waste money repeating? I mean, it's again, it ends up being one of these situations where, as I mentioned previously, and that's around all this shit around the United Nations and all these climate retard groups and the different agendas, where they'll set up a whole series of different names of agendas, and then they'll set up a whole different range of different groups, and the United Nations have all these different tentacles to try to make it appear like it's more impressive than it actually is. The scenarios within government, they will do layer after layer after layer after layer to try to get you to just give up. Don't make any complaints about anything, because it all takes far too long. I mean, you can literally have the smallest complaint that gets handled really badly, and getting it to any level of common sense, you probably won't manage to achieve anyway. But before you get to a real person that's going to make a real decision, you can take anything up to 3 years. I mean, it's farcical. All of that sort of stuff, as far as I'm concerned, would be wiped out. So that means this organisation is also pointless, gone. If you're overlapping with what somebody else already does, what do we need you for? I mean, again, try to remember, these are people that are pretending to be conservatives in the government, because they're sure as hell not conservative. They really are not. This is pure blue socialism. These people are just the patsies that are just, well, not patsies, the useful idiots, just implementing all of this crap to turn the country into a socialist nation again, to see the same crap that we had to put up with in the 1970s. And if there's anybody old enough to remember the 1970s in the UK, you will understand what I mean. There's a reason why you had punk rock. I mean, fucking morons. One more that I'll do today. Now, this one. Again, there's two names for this. There's one is the, oh fuck it, I'll just go with the name that I've got up there now, because with under the government, where it's listed under the government department, it's not the same name as what they're actually called now. So let's just go with what they're called now. Review Body on Senior Salaries, who again do not report any information in terms of the cost. So, you know, that standards on public life goes a long way, doesn't it? If they can't even do it to yet another little group of morons that have probably got the office next fucking door. Arseholes. These ones, though, I've highlighted these few paragraphs, and do as I recommend, basically, and that's in terms of if you want to look at the proper details, because I'm not going to read the whole fucking thing out. Press the pause button, have a look for yourself. The key problems I've got here is that they've included within their latest document is the economic outlook based on this Ponzi China virus. And it is, I mean, these people are just, if these are the people that are supposed to be understanding how salaries are calculated, these people are fucking retards. Again, more retards. Socialist, what do you expect? Oh dear, oh dear. I mean, it just defies belief, this one. Anyway, I've gone through the documentation around this. The key part that I want to highlight, and that it comes in the into chapter 3. They've got. I mean, you'll be able to notice some of this now. Anybody that's paid attention to the latest announcements from Rishi Sunak and that, where he's now not going to be doing a budget in November. Surprise, surprise. These people are so thick and don't give a damn about the general population that not only are they recommending 2% pay rises for the higher civil servants, they are estimating that the receipts, because of all of the unemployment that they have created, receipts will be 130 billion lower than expected. I sure as shit expect that it'll be even higher than that. And this is going to be based on lower receipts from income tax, no shit, VAT. I don't think they don't really understand anything, these people, because they say this is going to be offset by lower debt interest payments of around 10 billion and a small underspend of 2 billion. So 130 billion less revenue is somehow offset by 12 billion. Can you think of a problem with that? I mean, morons. For them to turn around and actually put it in that terminology, to say, I mean, first and foremost, learn to fucking count, but to say that it's offset. 130 billion, 12 billion. That's not an offset. And they'll use that as a justification to say, well, oh, you know, it's still going to be all right. We'll just borrow some more money that we'll have to screw everybody for later on, which is going to be a problem because we've just made them all fucking unemployed. And they don't care of the fact that they have just created that unemployment. They're only interested in, well, how much money will the government be? How much money will we be plucking out of thin air? You know, the fiat system, the money that doesn't actually exist. As long as they're all right, they couldn't give a shit about where the actual money comes from, the real money. They don't care. That's socialism. One of the other parts that they've got, and you can see this one at the bottom here, and that, they're whining about bloody diversity again. I mean, of all of the fucking problems that you've got, and the fact that you are destroying the economy, forgetting the fact that if you don't have anybody to pay any taxes, you haven't got any money, and they want to go on, oh, but we've got to be more diverse, despite the fact that their own documentation, which again, if you had any one of these morons had a conversation with their other morons, they would know that they're already over quota, according to their own little fucked up plan of being reflective of society. I mean, dipshits. It's just, they're gone. These people would be gone. And the thing that I would do with this, in terms of looking at those departments that would be left in government, because the way that these people are showing themselves to be utterly worthless, there would only be a few fucking departments left as far as I'm concerned. But one of the things that I would do in terms of reviewing the salaries of everybody, stick it into the Treasury Department. The Treasury Department, now I'm not going to hold my breath that these people can count either. But when you've actually got some competent people, I mean, if they are a little bit thicker, that's at least give them a fucking calculator. Let them understand, if you've got this much money and you're spending this much money, if it doesn't equate, if you're spending more than you're receiving, you can't have a fucking pay rise. You thick socialist pricks. Seriously, fucking. I'll tell you what. Going through all of this now. By the time I get to the end of this, I think I'm going to be absolutely evil. I'm gonna be the most miserable, ranting, raving, fucking lunatic you've ever come across in your life. No, when I'll be happy enough. But people need to understand. Have a look at your governments and see how thick these people are. I mean, I do understand that today there was an announcement of a new party that's been formed called the Heritage Party. I might get in touch with them and find out a little bit more. I mean, I've seen the basics of what they're suggesting is going to be their manifesto. But again, as per usual, no party puts out a proper manifesto by any stretch of the imagination. But it might be worth having a word with certain people, because on the face of it, I can't really see anything that is dramatically controversial. You know, it does seem to be a little bit more in line with what would be traditional conservative values. So they might be open to have something along these lines when it's good and ready. But it does seem to me that this is the only way that, whether it be the UK, whether it be other countries, you're going to have to bring out an alternative. You really are going to have an alternative, because all of these people that you've had in the established parties, they've proven themselves to be totally off the fucking range. They've lost the plot. And if you've got any hope of being able to solve all of these problems, you have to get rid of them. And people need to understand that you need to actually vote for the people that actually know what they're talking about as well. And it's up to everybody then to realistically get involved with these people to say, no, we want, this is the policy, this is the type of policy that we want, this is the reason why we want it, this is how you understand the process of the Sisyphus complex solution. When you're talking to one of these people, you say, right, this is what you're doing at the moment, this is what government looks like, this is how we want it repaired, this is what the solution is going to be. Rather than just sitting back and going, are you going to do that? Are you going to do that? Oh, I don't think anybody will vote for you. Don't sit on your arse. Get involved with whoever and try and put something together. Because otherwise than that, you just then sit back, wear your face nappy and do as you're told, and wait for the latest socialist fucking useful idiots come knocking on your door to kill you. Because that's basically how it works. Anyway, fuck them. Right, so this is the scenario at the moment, obviously, and that is getting smaller and smaller, and that because there's more in there. This will end up being, like I say, next week, and that 4 more in there. That'll be as condensed as it goes. But it's just to show you, this is what my spreadsheet, this particular portion of the spreadsheet, that's what it's looking like at the moment. So there's the subtotal of how much spending is allocated to the Cabinet Office. Obviously, minus those people that have integrity and openness, but don't want to let you know how much of our money they're spending. Who knows? I might chuck a few $100,000 in there and that to make up for those wankers. We'll see. I've managed to squeeze this one down a bit so I can still continue to include everything that's in there so far. So obviously, abolish all 3 of them. Don't want them, don't need them. And there's the cumulative savings so far, obviously, and that'll only be able to add that 75 grand into the picture. But that's where we are within the Sisyphus complex solution part of this. So,
fuck off! Who you think you are, you cheeky fucking twat!
Notice I moved it over a bit. I moved it over a bit, and that's so that you can actually have the full picture in this time. So anyway, let's move on. United Nations. How many people know about this one? The International Telecommunication Union, part of the United Nations. And what have we got at the top of this particular organisation? Another fucking communist. Became the Secretary General November 2018. I mean, I don't quite understand how you get a second 4-year term 1 year later. That's socialist mathematics for you, isn't it? So yeah, you can see at the upper level box that I've got there, that gives the specific information that shows you how he has ties to the Chinese government. You don't get to be somebody that is contributing into official circles in China without being a part of the Chinese Communist Party. It's as simple as that. Anybody that knows anything about China knows this simple fact. If you remember back when I did the Food and Agriculture organisation, and the guy that's in charge of that, by the name of, what's it, Ku Dongyu, however you pronounce it. If you remember, he was appointed in the 1st of August 2019, and he got his appointment by way of bribery and coercion by the Chinese Communist Party. How do you think this prick got it? How do you think he got to the position that he's in? And you don't think that he's working with China as well? Now, there's an important part to this. Obviously there'll be much more detail that I will display when I run through the United Nations in the same way as I'm doing on the UK government and on the Sisyphus complex solution side of things. When people are talking about big tech and how these big tech companies and how telecommunications are becoming increasingly censorious and various other issues, when you think that, as it states, 193 member states, 193 countries signed up to this, the 900 companies and universities, who do you think those 900 companies are? I've included a link as to the About Us page for him. Once you click through to that, go and have a look for yourself and see who's involved in this particular organisation, where they're all talking about having a one world future again, and all this sustainable growth together again, all the same bullshit terminology, the bastardisation of the English language. Every company that people complain about, and then even bigger. I mean, if you think that your national, I mean, pretty much every nation has got at least one big national telecommunications carrier. They're all involved in this. They're all signatories to this organisation. And then when you go into additional sides of what is considered to be telecommunications, it includes the likes of your Amazons and your Facebooks and all of these people. The academic side, the list of the Chinese universities that are involved in this is phenomenal. They've got the largest representation. I don't know if you can hear any sort of rumbling noises and blowing noises in the background. It's not me farting, honest. It's there's a bit of a storm going on outside and it's blowing down my chimney here, and that isn't a euphemism. Just in case there is that noise coming through. But when people are turning around and saying about, and particularly when you've seen in the US Senate, and they've hauled up these tech companies to ask them questions, and the particular question I can't remember, was it Jim Jeffries? I can't remember. No, Jim Jeffries is a comedian, isn't he? Anyway, one of the Republican senators asked about whether there is intellectual property theft taking place with the Chinese, and you had all these people saying no, 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 no. And I think it was only Mark Zuckerberg that said yes, everybody knows that. What do you think is one of the bodies that they would use to be able to have access to intellectual property, to be able to steal it in the first place? This sort of thing. Because they run all of these little programs and that, where all of the companies are all around the world together and that are going to be working together. This is why you end up with the scenarios of the social credit system that runs in China at the moment, and how all of this bullshit that's taking place here now is the gradual introduction of the same system here. All down to stuff like this, people like this, and the fact that very few people will probably have ever heard of the International Telecommunications Union, run by a fucking communist as part of the United Nations. Again, when I've told you before about all the little different tentacles, now they're made to look bigger than they are and all the rest of it, there's a great deal of this and that. It's you'll get some idea in that if you listen to the Delingpole video with what was his name again, Peter Foster, and how he describes how an awful lot of these corporations are actually intimidated by institutions like this. Because remember, again, when I explained about with ABB, these people, the people at the top of the organisation that are pandering to all this shit, they don't own the company. They're just an employee. And they're the ones that are being intimidated by the likes of these wankers. And then they will push all of this bullshit throughout their company because of this kind of intimidation. You're not having the heads of these organisations looking at what's going on and saying, fuck no, I'm not doing that. Going out publicly and saying, hell no. These are companies owned privately. It's nothing to do with you lot. Why are these companies not turning around and saying, no, shareholders, all shareholders, important announcement. This is what's going on. This is the scenario that we're facing. Do you actually want us to be members of this bunch of cunts? And I guarantee the shareholders, once they know what's going on, will say, hell no. And again, it becomes this matter of people needing to grow some balls again and saying, I'm not doing this. I'm not going to be intimidated by your little wanker groups trying to look like you're bigger than you actually are. And again, from a national perspective, like I say, the 193 member states, how many people in the public know that your nation is signed up to this shit? Find out. Ask the question and say, what the hell are you doing? There has to be some pressure put back on this sort of stuff. Because this is what the United Nations looks like. This is why you've got creeping fucking communism and socialism coming on all over the place. Because of these arseholes. And the likes of the bastards that started it, Maurice Strong. And as much as there's only a very small mention within that particular interview of him having met, I think he met David Rockefeller. The Rockefellers actually gave an awful lot of assistance to Maurice Strong. That's where you can get another link back to the Corbett report. Have a look and see what he's produced. I think there's 2 videos that will give you a lot of detail. It's why big oil conquered the world. There is another one as well. Anyway, you'll see. There's a 2-part documentary, but one of them is why big oil conquered the world. It'll give you a good bit of information around all that and the relationship between the Rockefellers and Maurice Strong. So it gives you that bit more background. So you can actually start putting these pieces together to figure out how there is so few people that are pushing this nonsense agenda, whereas most of the organisations and most of the states could quite easily say, no, we're not doing this, and put an end to the absolute lunacy that is taking place, and is going to get an awful lot worse if we don't. So anyway, that's this commie prick. So let's go into Economic Forum. So you got ABN AMRO. Yes, my face does cover part of the article, but it's the headlines really, and that you need to be looking at here, because obviously most people will know in that there's been all of this shouting and screaming about Russian collusion, and that to try to make it think that that's a terrible thing of Donald Trump. Well, they all tend to forget that it's the banks, and then if you've been keeping an eye on the news, it's the Bidens, it's the Clintons, and those are the ones with the Russian collusion. Because I've chosen two particular ones for this one. So the first one, the one where I cover up a part of the article, and that goes back to 2005, where ABN were in violation of money laundering laws, and through wire transfers, trade transactions from 1997 to 2004 that violated the economic sanctions on Libya and Iran. So essentially, in that it's funneling money across various routes where these idiots then thought that they could funnel it through the countries where there were sanctions and then spit it out the other end and launder the money for the Russians, for obviously in that very large commissions and for their own benefit. So they've done that in 2005. Yeah, well, in terms of having to pay the fine, I mean, the 80 million fine is based on the amount of money that they'd been detected of 3.2 billion being moved around in shell companies and then shoved through it, ending up actually in the US. So, you know, now as much as they're turning around and saying, oh no, not me, Gov, it's happened again. And that's why there's the more recent article, which is based from March of 2019, which is, as far as I understand, is still something that's ongoing. But this one, again, it's the exact same problem, funneling money out of Russia. You can see there's a few names that are on there, but this involves quite a few banks across Europe, and it includes the Danske Bank, the Swede Bank, Nordea Bank, Deutsche Bank, Credit Agricole, the ING Group, Raiffeisen Bank International, I'm not sure who they are, ABN AMRO, the ones that you can see in that Rabobank, Citigroup, and the Royal Bank of Scotland. Well, there's a shocker. Royal Bank of Scotland, and that is not going to be popular for anybody in the UK that remembers what happened in 2008, where we had to bail them out. You know, those wonderful Scots that are so fucking brilliant with their money. Not. So again, more corruption. It literally is across the board. I mean, every time I'm going to be, because like I said, I'll go one by one. I will name each and every one of the members of the World Economic Forum, and I will point out these people are criminals, and these people are working together with the United Nations pushing this socialist shit. If you think it's not to their benefit to do that, you have to understand again what socialist agendas are all about. You have to understand how like I say, the people that run a lot of these banks and whatever, and that, the ones that are assisting all of this shit, most of them are employees. The ones at the top that actually own it, I mean, in particular, in terms of ABN AMRO, when I said earlier that I had something to say about the Dutch, this is a state-owned bank. It's a Dutch state-owned bank. Now, when you look at Holland, in terms of, when I'd said previously about certain individuals from certain nations, that it's not just an American problem, it's not just a UK problem, it's sure as hell got a lot to do with Germany again, but it does include the likes of the Dutch royal family, the UK royal family. The UK royal family, as I've mentioned previously, this is why you had Prince Charles as the one doing the launch of the Great Reset. You have to understand what the links are between these different organisations and those very, very few, I think it's like, what does it work out at, something like 0.001%. It's just those very few arseholes where those links need to be cut, and the way that they're enabling this type of stuff, the whole thing is done through, it's all corrupt, and they're all looking towards going, right, in terms of the future, we'll all be buddies, you organisations, you'll get to have ownership of your portion of the assets, you'll be able to own this part of a monopoly within your country, and in terms of the finances, don't worry, we are going to screw the rest of the nation. All of the average individual, they are going to get screwed into the ground, and we'll give you their money. It literally is going to be as bad as that. That is the whole thing of socialism. Look at any socialist any socialist nation, whether it's a communist nation, whether it be now or in history. They screw everyone. And if you dare open your mouth, you disappear. That's the sort of shit that these people will eventually work towards. And that's their better world. So, World Economic Forum, seriously, I mean, I would actually hope that somebody has got a very nice, the next time they have, well, I'm sure they, it's rules for thee and not for me, so I'm sure at some point they'll all have another meeting at Davos in the not too distant future. I hope somebody's walking along with a fucking big rocket launcher. We don't need them. We do not need to be dictated to by consistent criminals. So when you get your idiots that turn around and that is going, oh, socialism is the answer because capitalism is terrible, there's a prime example that capitalism is terrible. No, those are the fucking socialists that are paying for your skanky arses that do nothing to go running around the street and causing havoc. You're the useful idiots. These are the fuckwits that are paying you to do it. Because you just don't understand. These organisations have got absolutely nothing to do with capitalism, or what we actually have, again, is Rhine capitalism. It's not capitalism. There is no free market. I mean, I even heard it in the Delingpole conversation today, that video that I recommended, where they're saying, capitalism has actually created a great deal of wealth, and it means that progress across the world, and that is significant. That's true to a point in terms of the results, but it wasn't through capitalism per se, it's through Rhine capitalism. But anyway, that'll be an argument that I'll have with an economist one of these days. So there was a lot to get through this week, so watch it in bits and pieces. I think most of you do anyway. Have a think about things. Like I said, I'll try to complete the Cabinet Office next week. It might mean knocking off the faux effing part, but I just want to get the Cabinet Office out of the way to move on to the next department. Because otherwise, no, I'd imagine there's an awful lot of people sitting there already and that going, for fuck's sake, move on. Anyway, getting an idea of the details, the bigger picture. Like I say, there's an awful lot that I'm not able to put in. I'll try to put things together and that in as a big picture as we progress, and I'll one of these days and that I'll show you how the actual Excel sheets are progressing. I just don't want to be showing my screen all the time. Anyway, the Moirai directory will end again. I'm not too sure what I'm going to do with that at the moment, because obviously after being removed from LinkedIn, there's not too much that I can do in terms of having the conversations with people on there and that to see if they wanted to promote their business. Not sure. I'll have a think about that one, but I'll keep it going for the time being. I will be posting this on Parler and on Minds. Anybody out there that's not on Parler and Minds that wants to get involved via those two platforms, I am still leaning towards Minds as being the one that I'll concentrate on more, because you can get more character use in there. You can actually write a decent sized post. Parler says that you get 1,000 characters, but you don't. It just seems to seize up if you use more than about, I don't know, 200-300 characters, which you can't really say much there, can you? I mean, it works for people that just put up content with no comment or no idea what it's about, but no. Anyway, yeah, I think that'll draw it to a close. So a lot to deal with, a lot to think about. Hopefully there's some good videos there and that I've recommended for you. Have a good think about them. Have a good watch. Start to understand what this whole picture really does look like. And no, it's not a fucking conspiracy theory. When you've got actual facts and evidence, it's not a conspiracy theory. They just call it that because they don't want you to know. They want to try to belittle you, to try to put you off, to try to make you look like you're talking out your arse, because they want to hide what it is that they're actually doing. So no, it's not a conspiracy theory. Get your evidence, understand what's going on, understand how you want things to look once we can actually start a proper fight back against this, because it is needed. Or at least just get fucking educated. Alright, so anyway, hopefully I'll see you next week. Hopefully I've managed to get everything done in time. I'm managing so far. See how it goes. Alright, cheers, take care, bye bye.